Okay, let's set the scene. It's November 20th, 1995. The entire United Kingdom is basically holding its breath. 23 million people are just glued to their TVs, watching what was immediately called the scoop of a generation.
And you can actually measure the impact. The moment the credits rolled, the national grid, power grid, registered this massive surge, 1,000 megawatts.
Which is just millions of people all putting the kettle on at the exact same time.
That's right. That is the definition of a national event. And people all over the world saw Diana, Princess of Wales, say that one line that just, it defined everything.
There were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded.
Exactly. It became historical shorthand.
But that broadcast,
Yeah.
what was once seen as this, incredible piece of journalism, is now just permanently stained.
Erosively stained, yeah.
Because fast forward almost 30 years, and the story of how that interview even happened is it's a shocking mess of deceit, a huge institutional cover-up, and catastrophic failure.
And it's a tragedy that the royal family, her sons, claim led directly to her suffering and ultimately her death.
So our mission in this deep dive is to get past the gossip, past the celebrity of it all, and really look at the systemic failure.
Right. We're going to unpack the Lord Dyson report, which laid it all bare. How the reporter, Martin Bashir, used what the report calls deceitful behavior.
And maybe even more important, the appalling failure of the BBC to deal with it back in 1996.
Which led to multi-million count apologies, resignations. I mean, they even banned the footage from ever being aired again. This is really about media accountability.
Okay, so let's start back in 1995. The sheer sensation around this Panorama interview, it was overwhelming.
It really was. 54 minutes of television gold. But it was all done in secret.
The secrecy is amazing. They had to smuggle the camera equipment into Kensington Palace.
Right, pretending it was a new hi-fi system.
That detail alone just tells you everything about the conspiratorial mood around the whole thing.
And the audience. I mean, 23 million in the UK is one thing, but globally, they estimated it was closer to 200 million people.
But the real phenomenon wasn't the numbers. It was the content. It was so raw. Diana was just so vulnerable.
She was, sharing things that royalty just did not talk about in public, ever.
It wasn't only the Camilla comment, which, grabbed all the headlines. She went so deep into her own struggles.
Oh, yeah. She talked about her postnatal depression, about self-harm, hurting her arms and legs. She detailed her battle with bulimia.
Calling it a secret disease, an escape mechanism. You can just hear the desperation in her voice when she talks about feeling worthless.
It's agonizing to listen to. And she also had this incredibly cynical view of her own fame, which really sets the stage for the manipulation.
What did she say?
She described herself as a good product that sits on a shelf, and people make a lot of money out of you.
Wow. So that feeling of being used, of not trusting anyone.
It made her the perfect target for what Bashir was about to do.
That vulnerability, feeling exploited and totally alone, it must have just destroyed all her defenses.
And the aftermath of the interview just piled on the pressure.
It wasn't just a scandal, it was a trigger.
Absolutely. The royal family's reaction was swift. Within a month, the Queen had written to both Charles and Diana,
Formally advising them to divorce.
Exactly. And there were reports that Prince William was just devastated, overcome with a feeling of dread. He knew it was over.
Diane herself later said she didn't regret it. She was afraid of a gagging clause in the divorce, so she felt it was then or never.
And that urgency, that isolation, that was the weakness Bashir exploited.
Which is the perfect hook, right? The deceit wasn't just a one-off lie. It was a calculated strategy targeting a woman who already felt her entire world was collapsing.
Precisely.
So let's get into the specifics of that deceit, the actual lies that the Dyson report confirmed.
Okay, so Martin Bashir didn't get this interview through great journalism. He got it through fraud.
He commissioned forged bank statements.
That's right. From a freelance graphic designer, a man named Matt Weissler.
And these weren't just random fakes. They were designed to hit Diana's biggest fears.
They were. The statements falsely showed that people very close to her were being paid to spy on her.
People like who?
Her brother's head of security, Alan Waller, and her own former private secretary, Patrick Jeffson. People she should have been able to trust implicitly.
That is the poison pill. Because her own brother, Lord Spencer, later confirmed he would never have even introduced Bashir to his sister if he hadn't seen those forgeries.
So Bashir used these lies to prove to her that her worst fears were real. He systematically destroyed her trust in her actual support system.
He isolated her.
Completely. And what's so disturbing is how quickly the institution failed. After the interview aired, other journalists started exposing the fakes.
And that led to a BBC internal inquiry in 1996.
It did, led by Tony Hall, who ironically later became the Director General of the entire BBC.
So what did that initial inquiry find?
It was a total exoneration of Bashir, a complete whitewash.
You're kidding.
Nope. It concluded that, yes, the documents had been forged, but, and this is the crucial part, they were not used to secure the interview.
So they basically said the fraud was irrelevant. They protected the scoop.
That's exactly what they did.
What did the Dyson report have to say about that 1996 investigation?
Oh, it just demolished it. Lord Dyson called it woefully ineffective.
Why?
Because they failed to interview the key people. They never spoke to the whistleblower, Matt Weisler.
The man who made the forgeries.
Right, and they never spoke to Earl Spencer. Weisler was made the scapegoat, his career was ruined, and Bashir just walked away.
It's just chilling. The corporation protected the liar over the whistleblower, the stoop over the ethics.
And by clearing Bashir in '96, the BBC effectively validated Diana's paranoia. They left her in that state for the last 2 years of her life.
That's the connecting thread, isn't it? They chose to protect their prize, and in doing so, they left her completely untethered, unable to trust her own security right up to the end.
And that massive failure is what led to this unprecedented reckoning 25 years later.
Which brings us to 2021, and the Dyson report finally coming out.
And it was definitive. It confirmed Bashir's deceit was a serious breach of conduct. It also, as we said, slammed that 1996 inquiry for covering the whole thing up.
The consequences were pretty immediate then.
They were. Martin Bashir resigned from the BBC citing health problems just days before the report was published.
Convenient timing.
Very. And let's not forget, the BBC had actually rehired him in 2016.
As a religious affairs correspondent, right?
Yeah. Parliament later called it out, saying the BBC knowingly rehired a known liar. It's just staggering.
In the financial fallout, the cost of this whole deceit was huge.
It had to be. The BBC issued a full and unconditional apology, but the payouts tell the real story.
To the people who were wrongly implicated.
Exactly. Patrick Jeffson, her former private secretary, he received substantial damages, reportedly around £100,000. Tiggy Legeborg, the nanny,
who was subjected to those awful false rumors.
She received around £200,000.
And what about Matt Weisler, the graphic designer who was scapegoated for decades?
He finally got justice. A settlement of around £750,000 for the destruction of his career.
And the BBC also gave away the money they made from the interview.
They did, £1.4 million. They donated all to charities associated with Diana. It was a massive admission of guilt.
It really is. And then the final act, in 2022, when the Director General announced they would never, ever air that interview again.
And they returned the BAFTA award they won for it. They basically had to strip their own success of all its legitimacy.
So this wasn't just an internal BBC mess. It blew up into a genuine governance crisis.
Oh, it went all the way to Parliament. Debates were held. They called the whole affair a source of shame for the country.
And demanded actual structural changes.
Exactly. This wasn't just a wrist slap. It forced a review of the BBC's Royal Charter, its entire governing document.
To make sure this couldn't happen again.
And, crucially, to protect whistleblowers. To make sure another Matt Weisler wasn't just thrown to the wolves.
Okay, let's pivot to the most difficult part of this whole story. The causal link between Bashir's lies and Diana's death.
This is the core argument from her family, especially her brother, Earl Spencer. He maintains that the deceit destroyed her ability to trust her entire protective structure.
It wasn't just emotional pain, it was practical.
It amplified her paranoia to such a degree that she became, in their words, untethered.
Meaning she started making her own high-risk decisions about security.
Exactly. Decisions that ultimately left her fatally exposed during that paparazzi chase in Paris in 1997.
And her son's statements after the Dyson report, they were just incredibly raw.
They were. Prince William said the lies contributed significantly to her fear, paranoia, and isolation that I remember from those final years with her.
He felt it. He saw it in her every day.
He did. And Prince Harry went even further. He blamed the ripple effect of a culture of exploitation and unethical practices for why our mother lost her life.
That's placing accountability squarely at the feet of the institution.
It is.
But it raises a question, right, for you listening. We know the official verdict on the crash blamed the drunk driver and the paparazzi.
Right.
So how do you reconcile the BBC's moral failure with that legal finding?
I think you have to separate legal causation from moral and systemic accountability.
Meaning?
The BBC wasn't legally driving the car, but its failure to correct the record from 1996 onwards meant they actively maintained the psychological instability that defined Diana's life.
They kept her locked in that paranoid state.
Precisely. The people who should have been her most trusted advisors were, in her mind, traitors because of those forged documents. By protecting their scoop, the BBC ensured she remained isolated, unable to trust anyone, right up to the very end.
So when we pull all the threads together,
Yeah.
this deep dive has shown us professional deceit, a massive institutional cover-up, huge financial penalties.
And a government mandate for cultural change at one of the most famous broadcasters in the world.
It's a chilling lesson.
It is. The former Director General John Burt called it an absolute horror story. He said they were all deceived by a serial liar on an industrial scale.
But if an institution like the BBC, with all its rules and its reputation, was willing to protect a serial liar over ethics for 25 years.
What does that say about holding any global media organization accountable today, in this age of intense pressure and speed?
And we'll leave you with that thought to consider. Can that kind of institutional trust, once it's been so fundamentally betrayed, can it ever really be restored? Especially when the human cost was so tragically high.
You've been listening to The Deep Dive, where we extract the core insights and analysis from the sources you share. We hope this has given you a clearer picture of the corrosive legacy of the Dyson Report and that 1995 interview.
We'll catch you next time.